Alright, so today you're going to be making fresh salsa with chips. And the purpose of you doing this lab is to get you acquainted with the room and to review your knife skills. So this salsa recipe is also used for Javicino, just in a much bigger quantity. So we're going to be really picky about how you do your cuts because we need to make these ingredients stretch a long way. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to rinse your vegetables, which I've already done, all right? And you just want to get rid of the pesticides and things like that, all right? You also want to make sure that you have a garbage bowl because you're going to be getting rid of all the excess nastiness and all the seeds and stuff like that, all right? So I'm using in our salsa 2 Roma or plum tomatoes, 2 scallions. You need about 2 tablespoons. And you're going to cut them really, really thin. So you might only need 1, but I took 2 just in case. You're also going to use some cilantro, some garlic, jalapeno, a little bit of olive oil, which, as you notice, I don't have any measuring spoons here because I'm going to eyeball it. When you're doing this in this recipe, or at the beginning, when it's for yourself, I want you to practice. We want you to practice with your measurements. So kind of eyeball things and taste. When it is for Javicino, it's very important that it's precise because our customers are looking for consistency. And then a little bit of salt and pepper and lime juice. So everything is fresh, and it's like a pico de gallo is essentially what the salsa is like. Okay, so I will be right back because I need to grab my. All right, so the first thing you're going to start off by doing is cutting your tomato, and you're going to cut it lengthwise. Okay, you're going to cut both of those tomatoes lengthwise, and then you want to get rid of the seeds. The seeds are the most disgusting part of this tomato. If you're putting this on a sandwich or something, it makes it nice and juicy, but if you're putting this in the salsa, it almost makes it gummy. So, because it has a very odd texture, you can kind of see it. And also, nobody wants those seeds in the salsa. The only seeds you maybe would want is the jalapeno seeds because they actually add flavor. Those don't add any flavor. Okay, so you want to get rid of all of that. And all 4 of them. So essentially, when you're doing this for this first lab, you're only doing 2 tomatoes, so it's not too bad. But when you're doing this for Javicino, you might be using 14 to 28 of these tomatoes. So you almost need to come up with a system with your partners and whatnot to get this done quickly and yet efficiently. Okay. And a lot of times students forget this part, and this is probably one of the key components of working with this recipe. Okay, so that's my garbage bowl. That's why I always have it right on hand. Okay. Now, what you're going to do is when you're working with this tomato, you want to make sure that your knife is very sharp. And we have knife sharpeners and honers in class, and you learn this all in culinary basics. And what I like to do is I like to hold my tomato upward like this rather than downward because it's sometimes hard to pierce into that skin. It's a little bit easier this way, and it's more comfortable for your hand. Okay, so you hold it like so, and you're going to start off by doing nice thin julienne cuts. And if, just to recap, a julienne is just a 2 to 3 inch matchstick, and you want them pretty fine. You want to be as consistent with your cuts as possible, and the best thing about it is it's really just, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So it all takes some practice. Okay, so now you're going to put these together, all right? And now, as you can recall from culinary basics, you're going to do a brunoise. And it needs to be really, really small. Because you can make this and you can feed an army if you cut it properly. Alright? So really, really, really small. Fine brunoise. So you can see, really, really, really small. So when you go through it, they should be smaller than bite size. Okay. And again, maybe designate 1 or 2 people at your group to take care of the tomatoes when everybody else takes care of the other vegetables. So when you look at this, like that one's a little too big. All right, so I'm just going to go through it. This is how picky we're going to be. I'm going to cut it in half. All right. Before you can mix any of your ingredients together, we want you to put all of your finished cuts together. We'll check them out, let you know if they're okay, and then you can mix and combine. All right. So I'm going to continue cutting these, and I'll be right back. So here's our finished tomatoes. Okay, so nice and fine, goes a long way. The next thing I already cut up some, but I'm going to show you what I did, is I took the green onion or scallion, and you cut out the white part, And some of it you probably use, but it doesn't have as much flavor. And this is not as potent as a white onion, so if you don't like onions, this is probably a great substitute for it. And when you're cutting it, you want it really, 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 really thin. Okay? Because no one wants a nice piece of onion in their tooth. And you can cut literally the entire thing. You notice how thin I'm doing it? If you cut it like this, too thick, you couldn't go back through and chop it. It's just easier if you just do it this way the first time. Alright? So nice and thin. I'm going to combine that there. You need about 2 tablespoons, which I have here. Okay? The next thing you're going to do is I have my jalapeno, and you're going to do exactly like what you did to the tomato. You're going to cut it in half. I took the seeds out, and then I julienned it. Okay, now what you're going to do is put all your matchsticks together, and you're going to do a nice, very fine again, brunoise, especially with this jalapeno. You want it very, very fine, because you want a little of that jalapeno to coat everything, but no one wants a big chunk of that. Okay? And again, with this one, you need the whole thing, so that's one whole jalapeno. Okay? And I'm going to go back through and just give it one more little chop to make sure. So the key here is very, very tiny cuts. And again, don't mix anything together until your teacher has approved your cuts. So essentially, this is going to take you about the whole period. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is get your garlic ready. You're going to smash your garlic clove. It calls for 1 clove. When it's a recipe for yourself, you can always add more. I'm just going to cut that off. So if you want to add maybe a couple cloves because you really like garlic, feel free. Help yourself. Okay, then with this, you're going to start off by, I'm just going to kind of chop it up a little this way. Okay, and then I'm going to mince it. So a mince is an irregular little cut, back and forth, and use your knife to help guide. Now be careful with it, because sometimes, you don't want to cut off your finger. Nobody would want that. And if you're using newer knives in class, it's going to be very sharp, so be very careful. Back and forth. Back and forth. So all these cuts are pretty good. So what I'm going to do, I still have to cut my cilantro, but I have no room on here, so I approved it. We're good to go. So I'm going to put this into my bowl, just like so. And I'm just picking this up with a dough scraper or a dough cutter. They're really used for baking, but they're amazingly perfect when you're doing your knife cuts and cleaning up. See how nice that all came together? Okay, so now you need about 2 tablespoons of cilantro. This looks like a lot, but it's going to be cut down a lot. So you're just going to roll through, give it a rough chop. I'm going to move this. And again, go back and forth. And the aroma of the cilantro is going to come out and be amazing. And fresh is always best with this. And you want this to be, again, really, really fine. So you want the cilantro to coat all aspects of your salsa. Especially when you're doing this for javicino prep, you don't want big pieces of the leaf. So that's more than enough. I'm probably only going to add about half of this. You need about 2 tablespoons. I guess maybe the more I cut it, it's getting smaller, so. Okay, so again with the dough cutter, just like so. Take about half of that. Okay, the last thing I'm going to cut is I'm going to take my lime. I'm going to use a whole lime. Okay, so you're going to take this. I already went back and forth, cut it in half lengthwise. Then you're going to put your fork in there and just start juicing it. Okay. And fresh lime is best. It's going to give it that nice natural flavor. Opposed to if you were to buy like lime juice, it just tastes a little more like processed or bottled. Okay. And then the salt and pepper to taste. I'm just starting with a pinch. And then you could always add more. And then what you need to make sure you're adding to this, the salt kind of preserves the flavor, and the pepper just adds flavor. You need an adherent, something to make it stick like glue, all the flavors. Okay, so you only need about a tablespoon, about a teaspoon and a half. So I'm just going to do a nice little coating. Okay. And then the acid in the lime juice also helps preserve it. So this is what we call a ready-to-eat food, and it can stay fresh in your refrigerator for up to 7 days from the day that you put it in the refrigerator. Okay? Now for Javicino, we have these little portion cups. So essentially what you'll do is you'll have a big bowl of this, and if you're in charge of portioning it and packaging it, you'll take a portion scoop and you'll kind of go through, and you need to make sure you fill it to the top, but not too high because you want to make sure that the lid fits. So everyone gets a nice portion of the salsa to eat with their fresh breakfast burrito that we serve it with. In class, you're going to eat this with fresh tortilla chips, and you have the option to either deep fry them or bake them. If you're deep frying them, your teacher will do a quick demo in class of how to do that. It's a very quick process. And if you're baking them, you'll watch the baking of the tortilla chips video after this one. All right, thank you, enjoy.